Good morning, everybody. Happy Friday. We're going to give folks just another minute to join. I think we had nearly 70 participants registered today, so we'll just give another minute so everyone can be online. It looks like everyone's microphones and cameras are disabled, so I apologize for that. We can enable those, I think. So I'll work on that, but we can definitely use the raised hand feature and enable those functions one by one as needed if I can't enable it wholesale. So I apologize for that. Um, okay, well, with that hiccup aside, we will get started. So welcome to the pre-application review and office hours for MBRC's funding programs. And really want to thank you for taking the time to join us on a Friday morning to learn more about how to submit a pre-application and the resources that we have available to help you, hopefully craft a successful project proposal. I'm Adrienne Harrison, and I serve as the Catalyst Program Manager at MBRC. I'm joined today by Marina Caceres. She serves as the program manager for both the Forest Economy and Timber for Transit programs. We also have Casey Haynes online. He's MBRC's program coordinator. I think I saw Sarah Demers registered. She's a member of the Maine State program team for MBRC. And there's a number of participants from our local development district partners. So thank you to everyone for joining. A few quick reminders before we get started. We are recording today's session. So the recording today, as well as the slides and the question and answers from the chat box will be made available on our website. If not today, next week. Um, you don't have a choice, but we'll keep our microphones muted today. Cameras are optional. Um, and we really invite you to use the chat box function to share any questions during today's session. We will have plenty of time for live Q&A, but if you have questions throughout today's webinar session, throughout the slides, feel free to use that chat box to get them out there. We'll be monitoring the chat box and responding to questions. Okay. So for those of you who may be looking for a little more information on the NBRC, the Northern Border Regional Commission, we are a federal state partnership for economic and community development. We work in Northern Maine, New Hampshire, Vermont, and New York. So those are our 4 member states of the commission. NBRC provides federal funds for economic development projects within that region. And using the funding programs that we will describe today. Those funding programs are a true partnership with the states. The states help determine the highest priority projects that contribute to the program goals and also the economic development plans and economic priorities for each state. You can find more about NBRC, including our history, our authority, and more about the members that make up the commission on our website. And the link is in the slide when you go to those resources later. Okay, so today we are going to cover a number of topics that will help prepare you to submit a pre-application. We'll go over the timeline for the fall funding program. We will provide an overview of eligibility and the 3 funding programs. We will provide information on how to register and access the NBRC's grants management system, and also how to start your pre-application within that system. We'll review the waivers that you may be required to submit with your pre-application, and we'll spend some time on the resources that are available to help you with this process. And of course, plenty of time for live Q&A. We will not be taking a deep dive or an in-depth review of the pre-application requirements today. Those are covered in other resources that we already have available on our website, and we'll highlight those for you today. Okay, so let's get started. This slide is intended to give you an overview of where you are in the application process and an overview of the grant life cycle at NBRC. So we're in the fall funding round, and at this time, you're right where you need to be. Interested applicants should be registering in the grants management system and begin working on pre-applications. Those pre-applications are required for all programs, and those are due later this month. We'll go over the timeline, and you will be notified if those pre-applications have been invited to submit a full application. So here's our timeline overview. Of course, the most important date right now is that all pre-applications and any applicable waivers are due before 5 p.m. on Friday, August 29th. You'll hear a few times today, please don't wait till 5 p.m. to hit the submit button on August 29th. Please try to submit early to avoid any last minute stress from potential errors that you receive in the GMS. So we'll go over those and mention that again. But yeah, so this is our timeline. You'll hear back from NBRC before September 22nd if your project or your pre-application has been invited to submit a full application. Okay, I'm going to turn it over to Marina.
All right. A few slides just on eligibility here. Know that our program user manuals on our program pages also cover this in detail. So if you're looking for more information, you can look there. Eligible organizations include NBR, state governments, local governments, and political subdivisions of states, federally recognized Native tribes, and 501c nonprofits. We'll also note that ineligible applicants include for-profit entities, LLCs, and other entities that are not a 501c status. Again, those are not eligible to apply for NBRC funding. Also not eligible are applicants outside of the NBRC for member states. Next slide. All right. So if you've determined you are an eligible entity, the next step is to determine your eligibility of the project based on the location of your project. So by statute, NBRC is required to assess annually the level of economic distress in our service area, and you'll see that represented in this map here. The resulting designations reflect whether NBRC can provide grants within a county and at what match rate. So there are 3 designations here: distressed in dark green, transitional in that lighter green, and attainment in that lighter blue color. Attainment counties may receive funds under 3 conditions. If that county has an isolated area of distress where the project will be located, if the project includes an attainment county, but is part of a multi-county or multi-state project that also includes distressed or transitional counties. And there are 2 exceptions to NBRC's distress criteria. First, an exception exists for projects located within an attainment county, but outside of an isolated area of distress, if that project will bring significant economic benefits to our distressed and transitional counties. The second exception exists for applicants or co-applicants located outside of the NBRC service area, but which have established operations within a member state, when the project will bring significant economic benefits to distressed or transitional counties. So that's a lot to take in. There's more information in our user manuals, and we can talk more about the significant benefit waiver, which is needed for those exceptions I described. We'll touch on that later on in these slides. Okay, NBRC has 3 competitive funding programs. I'll start on the left here. The Catalyst program is NBRC's flagship program and is designed to stimulate economic growth and inspire partnerships that improve rural economic vitality across the Northern Border Regional Commission 4-state region. The Catalyst program supports a broad range of economic development initiatives to modernize and expand our region's infrastructure and revitalize communities to support and attract workforce. In the middle, the Forest Economy Program is designed to support the forest-based economy and to assist in the evolution to include new technologies and viable business models across the 4 states. The Timber for Transit program is designed to advance the use of domestic forest products in transportation infrastructure projects across the NBRC states to showcase the capabilities of wood in those applications. So I'll touch on the Forest Economy and Timber for Transit programs a little more in detail first, and then I'll pass it back to Adrienne to talk more about Catalyst. So the Forest Economy Program is supported by a 9-member advisory board of forest experts who work every day with forest resources or with forested communities or both. With assistance from the advisory board, FEP eligible purposes were developed to address the identified needs of our region's forest economy. These eligible purposes listed here in project categories, which include community development projects, workforce training and retraining and development projects, marketing, communication, and education projects, and infrastructure projects that directly support the forest industry. The Forest Economy Program also has a unique set of investment priorities, which are detailed in the recorded sessions linked here, as well as in program materials. These investment priorities should be considered when developing a proposal. Again, the 2 linked sessions at the bottom of this slide. The first is a quick overview of the Forest Economy Program. That'll give you a good sense of whether your project's a good fit for that program. And then the second bullet, the 2025 information session, is a bit deeper dive into the Forest Economy Program. I see a couple of hands raised, and we'll stop in a minute for questions. But in the meantime, please feel free to pop questions in the chat, and we'll work on answering as we go. All right, so the Timber for Transit program, eligible project purposes for this program include both feasibility and implementation work. So feasibility projects could include inventory assessments, architectural and engineering designs, cost analyses, and permitting work. And those projects are eligible for a minimum of $250,000 and a maximum of $1 million. That feasibility work, of course, needs to address kind of the implementation priorities of this program. So the goal is to fund feasibility projects that then come back to NBRC for funding for that implementation work. The implementation projects include construction of transportation infrastructure and transportation adjacent infrastructure. Examples of transportation adjacent structures suitable for Timber for Transit funding can be found in our NBRC Timber for Transit Project Development Guide. That's located on the T4T program page, which we'll link later on. And then also for this program, we have those 2 video recordings. The first is an overview, and the second is a deeper dive. The Timber for Transit program also has unique investment priorities that are listed in the user manual and should be considered as well. All right, next slide.
Okay. Does anyone have a question? We can just take a quick pause. I see Ina with a hand up. No? Okay. Okay, well, I will continue with some information about the Catalyst program. The Catalyst program is a highly competitive funding program that supports a broad range of economic development initiatives. And that Catalyst program user manual describes each of the project categories in lengthy detail, along with examples of past funded projects to give you an idea of the types of economic development projects that are successful. The infrastructure projects support construction of transportation, basic public, and telecommunications infrastructure. The basic public infrastructure category is a big category and includes construction of water and wastewater systems, solid waste, heat generation, outdoor recreation, public meeting spaces, childcare, and healthcare facilities. So, again, you can go into the manual and read a lot of detail about the types of projects that are eligible under those categories. The infrastructure projects have a maximum award size of $1 million, so a maximum award or maximum request of MBRC funds in the amount of $1 million, unless they meet the criteria for what we call a higher maximum award size, which would allow that request amount to be up to $3 million. And real quickly, the criteria that you need to meet to be eligible for that higher maximum award size is either a project that includes two or more infrastructure categories. So it would need to include a construction of a transportation activity, as well as a construction of basic public infrastructure category or construction of telecommunications category. So two of those three categories would need to be included in your project. The other option would be if you have a single infrastructure project that includes construction in two or more jurisdictions, two or more communities. So again, there's more information in the user manual on the criteria for the higher maximum award size. We also have what we call non-infrastructure projects. Those are projects that support feasibility studies, programs. It can support construction of buildings, but they're all focused on either business and workforce development, resource conservation, tourism, and recreation, as well as basic healthcare. So those non-infrastructure projects have a maximum award size of up to $500,000. The feasibility studies, that's a new category in 2025, and those have a maximum award size of $100,000, really intended to support planning and engineering for some larger infrastructure type projects. All the projects proposed for the Catalyst program should support the mission of the program. They should support economic growth as well as partnerships that improve that rural economic vitality of the region. Those projects really must demonstrate alignment with the state economic development goals, and you can find information about the state economic development goals in three places. One, in the MBRC website, we have a link to state economic development plans. Two, by meeting with your state program manager to learn more about the priorities for that state program. And three, by going to the Appendix K of the Catalyst Program User Manual to look at the state scoring criteria, which also details the priorities for their program. Catalyst program projects build in grant administration costs into the project budget. MBRC requires that Catalyst projects work with local development districts unless they are entities of the state or they receive an approved LDD waiver. So the LDDs, they provide that really important technical assistance throughout the grant life cycle. And you can find more about that grant administration technical assistance that they provide by either viewing the 2025 program overview series on local development districts or going to the MBRC LDD website that we have on our resources page. Let's see, what else about the Catalyst program? You will want to, similar to Timber for Transit and similar to FEP, we have those pre-recorded webinars. They're linked here on this slide, where you can find out a lot more detail about the program priorities and how to complete a pre-application for this program. Okay. I hope that those three sort of brief overviews of the programs helped those of you that might not be sure what program is right for your project. I hope that provided some information to help you understand which program your project might fit in best. If you need more information about our programs, feel free to reach out to Marina or myself so we can help you get your project in the right place. Let's see. Okay, registration. So this is the step where you can register your organization in the MBRC grants management system. And this will allow you access to the pre-application funding announcements in our system. The authorized official for your organization should submit this registration. This is important because that authorized official is the person who can sign all of the MBRC investment documents on your organization's behalf. And so by submitting a pre-application, we want to make sure that your authorized official is the one registered in the system and with the authority to submit those pre-applications. As part of the registration process, you will input information, of course, about your organization. One of those pieces of information is your employer identification number. The EIN is required to proceed with the registration process, so you'll really want to have that handy when you go in to register. The other important piece of information that will be asked for is your unique entity ID or identifier. This is a number that replaced the DUNS number a couple years ago, and you can, if you don't have a UEI number, you can go to sam.gov, sam.gov, to register for a UEI. You don't need to have this at the time of registration. We really recommend that you have it at the time of application. We can't provide any federal funds to you without this number, so it's a good time to go ahead and register for that number so it's available to you later in the process. We have detailed guidance for registering your organization on MBRC's resources webpage. You can go to that webpage and click register your organization's account. There's a guidance document that will pop up, and it literally gives you a step-by-step instructions for registering your organization and the information that you'll need to input. If your registration is declined, or you receive a message saying it wasn't approved, this means that either your organization has been determined to be ineligible, or that your organization is located outside of the MBRC region. We use the location associated with that EIN number to identify if you're within the MBRC eligible counties that Marina went over, or if you're outside of those counties. You may be eligible for a significant benefit waiver. So if you feel like you can meet the requirements for the significant benefit waiver, you can email us recognizing the need for that significant benefits waiver, and we will approve your registration. And we'll go over the waivers in a few minutes. Okay, so once you've completed your registration, you can return to the GMS. you can log in and you'll want to view the funding program announcements that are available, and you'll need to complete a step to qualify for those funding announcements. It's a pretty simple, quick process. There's instructions again. We have really detailed guidance for finding and qualifying for the open funding programs in our GMS. Um, you'll go to that MBRC resources webpage, click on creating and submitting a pre-application. And there's instructions there, but it's simply a button that says qualify, and it will pop up the funding opportunities that are available for your organization. You'll also then be able to create a pre-application. Again, there's step-by-step instructions in the guidance document for creating a pre-application. One of the common questions we get is that applicants are sometimes not able to find their pre-application again once they've created it and started working on it. They've saved it and they've left the system and they come back and they can't find it. There's again guidance for that particular issue in this document. Essentially, you just need to make sure you're viewing all pre-applications. Sometimes when you log back in, you're limited to, or you're only viewing a certain category of pre-applications, like maybe submitted applications. At this point, you wouldn't have any submitted applications. So just make sure you're viewing all pre-applications, and resist the urge to create a second application, a pre-application if you can't find it. You are able to create multiple pre-applications, but it can get confusing later on if you have multiple pre-applications available to edit. The program user manuals have detailed information about each of the pre-application questions. So we really recommend that you have this manual open as you go through the pre-application questions. We'll provide, suggested length of responses, prompting questions that help you craft responses that answer or provide the type of information we're looking for. So please have that manual open. It will be a really helpful resource to you as you walk through the pre-application. And one final note on the contacts section of your pre-application. Your authorized official will be pre-populated there. So the person that set up the organization profile and registered that organization will show up as a project manager role in your contact section. You can add a second contact to your pre-application. And there are instructions on how to create new contacts and associate those contacts with your pre-application. You'll also want to associate an LDD contact, that local development district, for Catalyst projects. For Catalyst projects, you want to do this. You don't need to do this for Timber for Transit or for FEP, Forest Economy pre-applications, but for Catalyst, it's really helpful to associate the LDD contact with your pre-application. And again, you can find information on those LDDs on our webpage. We have a specific LDD, MBRC LDD webpage. And just remember to save your pre-application often. No one likes to lose their work, so save your pre-application often. Pre-application waivers. So the only documents that can be attached to the pre-application are these 3 pre-application waivers. You may have a project where none of these waivers apply. You may have a project where all of these waivers apply. So I'm going to walk through them so you can understand if these waivers may apply to your project. And again, all of these waiver requests are due with the pre-application before 5 p.m. on August 29th. Okay, so the first Pre-application waiver is the significant benefit waiver. We've mentioned that a couple times already. This is required again for eligible applicants whose primary place of business is located outside of the NBRC service area, but within a member state. So the applicant or co-applicant will need to be able to demonstrate that their project brings or results in direct investment of NBRC funds and has a significant economic benefit within an NBRC distressed or transitional county. So you can find all the details on this waiver in our program user manuals in the appendices. And it provides additional information on the type of supporting narrative that should be submitted with the waiver. So it's the waiver form, but equally important is the information that provides or is attaching that information that supports, that claim that the project will bring those economic benefits and those investments to those eligible distressed or transitional counties. So if that applies to you, you'll want to submit that in the forms and files section of your pre-application. There's an actual, spot for you to upload it there under the significant benefit waiver. It's optional, so it's not required. You don't have to upload something there. Again, it's only if it applies to your organization. Next is the 75% prior investment waiver. So if your organization has an open award with NBRC that is not yet 75% expended, your organization is not eligible to receive an additional NBRC investment unless you get this waiver approved or submit this waiver for approval. Some larger organizations, such as a state agency or a university, may have an open award under another office or division. You may or may not be aware of that award. If you have questions about whether or not your organization has an existing award with NBRC or what that expenditure level is for an open award, you can contact NBRC at admin@nbrc.gov to find out more. But essentially the 75% expenditure requirement needs to be met and or you need to have this waiver. The 75% expenditure requirement applies across all of the NBRC programs. So for example, if you have an Open Catalyst program award that is not yet 75% expended, you will need a waiver to apply to another one of our programs, such as Forest Economy or Timber for Transit. The third waiver, the Catalyst program, is for the Catalyst program only. As I mentioned before, the Catalyst program requires the use of an LDD for grant administration technical assistance, unless your organization is a state agency or you have an approved LDD waiver. So the LDD waiver may be an option for entities that have prior federal grant administration experience, as well as the current capacity to administer an NBRC grant. That might be something that would be available to you and you could apply for an LDD waiver if your organization is one of those that fits that description. We really recommend working with our LDD partners for grant administration services. They have a lot of experience and knowledge and will definitely save you time in our process. Okay.
All
I'm gonna
right.
hand it over to Marina.
Thanks. So we've narrowed down a list of 6 pro tips for crafting your pre-application and narrative details. So first, we understand that project development happens well before you come to NBRC for funding. It's important that you get feedback early on from NBRC and state program managers. NBRC can provide feedback on project fit with NBRC programs. So if when you registered, you said you weren't sure which program is the best fit, that's where we can be helpful. We can also provide feedback on eligibility requirements, whereas states can answer questions and provide critical feedback on the project's competitiveness and alignment with state priorities and economic development goals. If you've tried to get in touch with your state program manager and haven't been able to connect, please know that they may be inundated with requests as we approach the pre-application deadline. So please be patient. You can always let them know, like, I'm planning to submit this project, and if they have questions, set up a meeting ahead of that pre-application deadline. We have a resource available for developing and strengthening the project concept, and that is linked on this slide and on our website. So we did kind of a workshop series. This first one was developing and strengthening the project concept. Our second pro tip is it's important for your pre-application to demonstrate your project is ready for investment. So if your project is awarded, you'll have 3 years to complete it. There are important considerations to factor in as you develop your implementation timeline, including things like getting the project set up. That can take some time with NBRC, as well as NEPA review. Your pre-application should demonstrate a realistic timeline for completing the project within the granted time frame. Our pre-application workshop called Is Your Project Ready for NBRC Investment? Further details project readiness, including where and how you can show readiness in your pre-application. Number 3 is be clear and concise. NBRC has a 5,000 character limit for questions in the grants management system. That doesn't mean you have to use the entire character allotment. In the project abstract, we encourage you to write an elevator pitch, including the who, what, when, where, why of your project scope. Have this be the first paragraph of your abstract. Historic details are great and may help to paint the picture, but keep in mind that reviewers are reading many proposals, and off the bat, we want to know what you plan to do directly with NBRC funding and what you plan to accomplish. Okay, this leads to pro tip number 4 on the next slide, which is to describe how the requested NBRC funds will be used. So how exactly do you plan to spend NBRC dollars? Tell the reviewer in the narrative questions and make sure that narrative aligns with the budget information you submit. In other words, it should be very clear for the reviewer what you plan to do with NBRC funding, how it supports your project scope of work and objectives, and the budget information, the numbers should directly support those claims. Number 5. If you determine that waiver requests are required for your project, be sure to follow the instructions and submit required supporting narrative with your request. So that significant benefit waiver and the 75% expenditure waiver, we ask for narrative to support those waiver requests. So we've seen in the past people just submit the waiver form and want to make sure that folks are also submitting substantiating documentation with that waiver request. Finally, number 6 is submit early. You heard Adrienne say that earlier. Fitting 2 grant rounds in a single calendar year can be really tricky, and we understand that this fall's deadline is on a Friday before Labor Day weekend. So heads up if you hadn't seen that coming yet. Save yourself some stress by starting early and submitting early. There are certain validations that the grants management system performs when you hit the submit button, and they don't perform them until you hit that submit button. So by submitting early, you'll get to see and manage any errors that result from the GMS validations. At 5 p.m. on August 29th, the grants management system will no longer allow for submission. So just plan ahead, submit early. So just to summarize those feedback tips, or the pro tips: 1, get early feedback. 2, demonstrate project readiness. 3 was be clear and concise. 4 is clearly show how you plan to spend NBRC funds. 5, follow instructions for submitting the waiver requests, including those supporting narratives. And 6 is submit early. And I'll add to that, start early, make sure to save often, and submit early. Finally, we have some resources listed here. We've developed a whole library of resources to help you submit the best possible proposal to NBRC. I mentioned our program pages. We have a page for Catalyst, for Forest Economy, and for the Timber for Transit program. Each of those program pages has a user manual, has an FAQ document. It has a link to the project interest form we mentioned earlier. They show regional initiatives, if applicable, in terms of like state priorities. That's a good place to look. We show our award history. That might be a helpful reference if you are looking for, you know, you're doing a project and you want to see similar work that we've funded. We have our eligibility guidance and more there. We also have this pre-application support page. I linked that in the chat, I think once or twice, but that link will bring you right to, where you registered for these office hours. We'll put the recording up there. We also have other recorded info sessions. Things like the project readiness workshop are up on that page. We also have web pages for the National Environmental Protection Act requirements, as well as the Build America Buy America Act requirements, the NEPA and BABA web pages. There's resources there, including trainings, waivers, if those are applicable. The NEPA intake form and things like that are not due until application, but it can be nice for planning purposes to take a look at the NEPA process ahead of time. And finally, the NBRC resources page contains standard forms, templates, and GMS technical resources for registration, pre-application, submission, and application guidance. So as you're working through your registration, your pre-application, etc., if you run into GMS issues, please check those resources first. Oftentimes there's a common error message that folks receive, and it might be a really simple solution. Of course, if you continue to have problems, please reach out to admin@nbrc.gov. We have a lot of eyes on that email, and we work together to answer questions as they come in. Next slide. Thanks. Okay. I think we've answered a lot of questions in the chat already. Happy to let people come off mute and we can answer questions here. Yeah, Ina. I saw a hand raised. Is it Ina? Okay, folks are muted, so just make sure to come off mute. Maybe I'll go to Sasha.
Hi, I was just curious about the differences in the regular Catalyst program grant and the feasibility grant. Is there a difference in the NEPA requirements in the timeline? What's considered infrastructure? Could you talk a little bit about the differences?
Sure. So for feasibility projects specifically, we don't have different requirements for those projects. all MBRC funded projects require a NEPA review. However, feasibility projects typically qualify as a categorical exclusion. So those are, that's generally a pretty quick review process of, just a few weeks. So in terms of the requirements are the same, but the timeline is typically a little more, that NEPA timeline is faster for feasibility projects typically. And they, typically those projects are completed earlier than than the full 3-year performance period, but they still, have the option to take a 3-year period of time to complete those projects. And yeah, the maximum award size is different. It's a lower amount, a $100,000 maximum award size. Again, it's really meant to support planning, maybe some engineering for projects. Let's see. I see another hand raised. Andy?
Hi there, Andy Lowe from the New England Rural Health Association. I'm wondering about the feasibility of doing multi-state regional projects with the need for different LDDs and state economic development plans and that kind of thing.
Yeah, for the Catalyst program.
For Catalyst, yeah.
Yeah, so multi-state projects are unique in the Catalyst program. Essentially, a project will be reviewed by each state. A multi-state project could be awarded in all the states that it had proposed work in. Sometimes those projects may see an award of the activities in one state, but not another state. So for those multi-state projects, I highly encourage you to connect with the state program managers in all of the states with proposed work, maybe even connecting with them at the same time to explain why a multi-state approach is critical. So they are a little different because it's not reviewed just once, it's reviewed multiple times by each of the states where the project takes place. In terms of an LDD, we can work to figure that out, which LDD would be the best place for your technical assistance. So you might not know that quite yet. Maybe we would do that after the pre-application stage.
All right, thank you.
Yes. Let's see, Kathy.
Thank you. I apologize. I did have to join late, and so you possibly have already covered this. But is there an up-to-date list and or up-to-date map that shows the distressed areas, the counties? Because the information that I'm looking at or that I'm able to find today doesn't appear to be up to date. And so could you just point me in the right direction?
Sure. We can put a link in the website or in our chat box to the MBRC distress criteria on our website. Oh, someone already did. Thanks, Marina. But yes, there's a full report on our website that goes state by state and outlines the eligible counties and what qualification or what distress criteria they meet.
Okay, and so if I view the distressed criteria, that's going to take me to what
Yes,
I'm actually looking for.
Yes, this
Okay,
link
got
that.
it.
Yeah.
Thank you so
perfect.
much.
Yeah.
Okay.
We had a question about funding for 2026? Adrian, I don't know if you want to take that. You had a really nice answer, yes, during Wednesday's session.
Yes, we do get this question a fair amount. We anticipate putting out our funding programs for the year 2026. That information is usually made available in the middle of January, sometimes earlier. Right now, we don't have our budget for FY26. We're currently in federal fiscal year 2025. There's an ongoing budget process, which we're monitoring. So that, we anticipate getting that information sometime in the early fall. And so again, we'll just reiterate, we anticipate putting out a program in 2026. We don't have the information on the exact funding levels or what will be available in 2026. It's an ongoing budget process, and definitely if you have some additional questions about that process, you are welcome to send an email to our admin@nbrc.gov, and we will connect you with our executive director, Sarah Waring, because she is really the person on point for tracking all of our 2026 budget details.
And Adrian, just while we're kind of on that thread, do we have any additional information to share about the funding availability specific to the fall round that we're able to share out at this time? Okay.
Yes. So all of the information about our current funding levels are available in two places. One, the program overview for each of our programs on our websites has been updated for the fall funding availability amounts. So you can go to our program area pages and you can view, for example, the Catalyst program overview, and you'll see that there's $40 million set aside for the fall funding round. And you can do the same for Timber for Transit and Forest Economy. Those overviews have been updated. It's also listed in our funding announcement information in the grants management system. So you should be able to see the most up-to-date available funds in our grants management system as well. Let's see. I see Kathy with your hand raised. No, maybe. Oh.
Sorry, that was my bad.
Oh, okay. Let's see. I see Artie. You have your hand raised.
Yeah. Yes, thanks. I think I pushed it twice. So my name is Artie Russell. I'm with the Feeder Canal Alliance in New York State, Washington, and Warren counties. And I have two questions. One is, can NBRC funds be used to match another source of state funding, for example, like a CFA award for 2026?
So we don't have any restrictions on if our funds can be used as match for another federal award. So you'll want to, I think it's more important that you check in with them on if they have any restrictions on having federal funds as match. The only thing I'll point out is that no more than 80% of a total project's costs can come from federal sources. So if you're combining multiple federal sources, you'll just want to keep an eye that we don't exceed that 80% federal funding ceiling.
Perfect, thanks. And then the next question is, if we apply for example, for $100,000, do you award a lesser amount, or do you only award our initial ask? Like, is it if you look at it and say no, you know, we don't have it this year, we'll do 50,000, or do you just say yes or no?
Yeah, no, that's
Based
a
on
great
request.
question. We as a policy do not partially fund award requests. So if you're requesting $100,000, we only fund it at the $100,000 ask.
Okay, thanks.
I might just add to that to say we have in the past at pre-application, if we feel a project should move forward with our state partners, but want them to come at a reduced amount, we might ask you to apply at that, you know, say it's a cap of, you know, 1 million versus 2 or something, depending on the program. We would let you know in advance of that request.
Great, thanks.
All right, while my mic is unmuted, any other questions? Again, we will make these slides available on the pre-application support page, so keep an eye out. Yeah, Shannon. Shannon, you're muted. Oh, there we go.
Hi, I have a question about the administration fees. It looks like I read it as an LDD is required. Is there an option that a outside consultant can perform that responsibility for administration? And if so, is it limited to 2% of the grant request?
Okay, so the LDDs are the entity for grant administration services. So if you wanted to use a different entity, you would need a waiver from the LDD requirement. So that's one part. Second, the LDD grant administration fee is a little different in 2025. So one reminder that maybe we didn't start with is that we change our program materials every year. So please always go to the NBRC website for the most up-to-date manuals. Don't use the manual from the spring round, and don't use the manual from a prior year because some information has changed. So you can see on the user manuals that what date it was updated. So please use the one from this summer. And the LDD fee, if your project is, if your Catalyst project is requesting $400,000 or less, it's a flat fee of an $8,000 grant administration cost. If your project is requesting more than $400,000, then it is a 2% of the requested amount grant administration fee. So I just wanted to take that opportunity to outline the fee.
Okay.
And then third part to your question, if you wanted to use an outside consultant, you would need to competitively award that. So you would need to have an RFP or bid process for those costs, and they would still be limited to the grant administration fee.
Okay, thank you.
Yes. Okay, we have a few more questions. It looks like Rachel, you have your hand raised.
Hi, thank you for taking my question. My apologies, I may have misheard something, but the no more than 80% of federal grant funding, was that for construction projects, or would that also include feasibility projects?
That is for all awards.
Okay.
Yes.
Great. Thank you.
And the 80% is based on the total project costs.
Okay, so total project costs and our match can count both towards that 80, that required 20%, but it can also, or our in-kind can also count towards the required match for NRBC.
Yes.
Great, thank you.
So just clarifying, the match rate is based on the NBRC request amount. So just note, because that can be a little bit confusing. The 80% federal ceiling based on total project costs, whereas the NBRC required match is based on the NBRC request amount.
Thank you.
Kathy?
So cycling back around to the designated areas, how do small communities become identified as isolated communities within an attainment area? So is that automatic based on public information of poverty levels, or do the communities initiate some process asking to be identified as an isolated area?
I'm happy to jump in on this. I'm not the expert on staff, so if there's some additional questions that you have, definitely send us an email, or we can get some more
Okay.
specific technical parts of that. But my understanding is that it's not a process that the town initiates. It's just a product of the factors that get applied across the board being applied to those specific communities.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's what it looks like to me. Okay, thank you.
Okay, well, thanks for staying with us a little after the hour. This was a great session. Really appreciate all your engagement and your questions. As Marina said, we will be making these available, these slides, the recording and the Q&A, the questions and the answers available on our website. If not later today, early next week.
Thank you all.
Yeah, thank you. We look forward
Thanks,
to seeing
Adrienne.
your pre-applications.